Hello, my name is Chris Horton, and this is George. And you're watching KidLit TV.
It's SLJ's Best of 2016 livestream on KidLit TV, sponsored by Follett and Scholastic, featuring this year's Best Picture Book, Middle Grade, Nonfiction, and Young Adult Books, and a sneak peek at the top 10 DVDs, audiobooks, apps, and more. And now here's your host, Rocco Staino.
Hi, I'm Rocco Staino, and welcome to KidLit TV. I'm really excited today because I have the editors from School Library Journal with the most anticipated announcement of the KidLit year. It's the SLJ Best Book List. Well, welcome all of you. Yes, so now we're going to find out who these people are before we get into the list. But one thing, we're going to also be congratulating the authors and illustrators, and we're going to be using the hashtag SLJ SLJ Best 2016. So as people announce the books, get up your Twitter account and congratulate these people. So I'd like to introduce Kiera Parrott.
Parrot like the bird. Hi, Rocco.
Yes,
It's very nice to be here.
Yes, and you are the book review editor for LJ
and SLJ. That's right. Yeah.
Yes, and Luann Toth. Luann this is your 28th year on with the list. Yes, and this is a big year because this list has been around for 50 years.
It has.
Yeah, so you must have some good
involved.
Stories, right? And Della, Farrell, this is your first year doing the lists. So how was it? Was it exciting?
It was exciting, challenging, but so rewarding.
Yes.
I loved it.
Yeah, and in the back row over here, we have Mahnaz Dar and Ken Turner. Yes, and two people are not with us today. Yes, Shelley Diaz. Shelley has a good excuse for not being here. What's the excuse?
Shelley just had a beautiful baby girl, so she's out on maternity leave right now.
Hi,
We miss
Shelley.
you,
Shelley. Love you.
And Daryl Grabarek is finishing her school day. She is an editor and a school librarian in New York City. So she's just finishing her school day, and hopefully she just tuned in to hear us announce the list, but we all know she knows what's on the list. So you're forgiven, Daryl, if you're not tuning in. So, but now let's go on back just to talk to Mahnaz. Mahnaz, we're going to tell us about how about the list. Yes, we said that this is a good year, 50 years. So tell us a little bit about how does this list come about?
I went back, I actually looked in the archives of SLJ, and I discovered that the first list we ever did was 1966, and just by pure coincidence, our list has 66 titles on it this year. We didn't do it on purpose, just sort of a happy accident. So every year, the editors at SLJ, the review editors, we start usually in the late summer, and we look at all of the books that we've reviewed that year. We review almost 6,000 items every single year. It's a lot of material. And we usually start with our stars. So these are the books that have gotten a starred review, and they're distinguished in some way. They really sort of rise above. Every month we have meetings to determine of all the books being reviewed that month, which are the very best that month. So towards the end of the year, we start with that long list of stars, and then each individual editor who's a part of the committee gets to nominate a certain number of titles that we think should be on that sort of master nomination list. And we each got to nominate about 20 or 30 depending on the year. And it seems like a lot, each person nominating 20 or 30 books, but when you're thinking thousands, that's actually a small amount. And then we have our big master nomination list. We spend several months reading, rereading, having lots of discussions and debates about the books until finally, the end of October, we have a meeting that's a full day long. It's usually off-site at a local library library, and we bring all of the books in, we put them all on the table, and we discuss them in chunks. So picture books get discussed, chapter books, middle grade, YA, nonfiction, etc. And then we vote. We actually have paper ballots, and we cast our votes to sort of build a consensus around the titles that we think should stay on that list, and some of the titles that maybe we love but don't quite make that final list.
So do you get lunch that day?
We do. We do break for lunch. This year we were at the Grand Army Plaza, Brooklyn Public Library. We went to, was it Cheryl's? Very lovely lunch spot.
Oh, a shout out for Cheryl's. Yes, and at the end of the program, the full list will be available.
That's right. So I think you'll be able to look right below this little window right here and get a free downloadable PDF that'll have all 66 books. So today we're going to talk about some of our highlights, our favorites from the list, but we won't have time to talk about every single book, but you'll get them all down below.
Well, I'm just going to go in the back to talk to Mahnaz. So Mahnaz, were any of the books that you nominated, did they actually make the list?
Yes, Rocco, 2 of my books made the list. The first one is Miss Bixby's Last Day by John David Anderson from HarperCollins. And this is that rare book that's about grief and loss, but also about so much more. It's a real celebration of life. It's about these 3 boys, and they discover that their beloved teacher, Miss Bixby, is terminally ill. So they decide to cut class and give her a tribute. But things don't go as planned. Hijinks ensue. But ultimately, this is a really heartfelt, poignant, tender book that's going to resonate with both adults and children.
And the other?
And the other is March, book 3 by, thank you, John Lewis, Andrew Aden, and illustrator Nate Powell. This is the 3rd book in the March trilogy. And these are the books where John Lewis discusses his civil rights experiences. It's simultaneously epic and yet deeply personal. The art is striking, great use of light and dark. And the message of standing up for what you believe in is more timely today than ever before.
Well, it's a big week for March because it's one of the finalists for the National Book Award, so we'll find out on Wednesday if it is the winner. Yes. Now, so, Kent, yes. Tell me about your favorites.
Well, let me see. First off is Jason and the Argonauts, written and illustrated by Robert Byrd and published by Dial. Well, first of all, there are the illustrations. They are action-packed, very detailed-oriented, they're epic, and then there's the text, because you have a flying sheep, a multi-headed monster, vengeful gods, you name it. It's pretty irresistible. It's a very good introduction because also within the illustrations are sidebars which explain a bit about the other gods and other myths. There's a good biblio, so it's great for reports, and it's overall a very good introduction.
Sounds great. Yes. I can't wait to check it out.
And then next I have Sabotage by Neil Bascom, and it's published by Scholastic. And the subtitle explains it pretty clearly: the mission to destroy Hitler's atomic bomb. And the men who are trying to do this, they're everyday Norwegians who enlist in the resistance when Germany invades Norway in 1940. And so they flee to Britain, where they undergo a crash course in espionage. And so they train how to be spies, and with very low-tech equipment, they fly back to Norway, parachute back in the dead of winter, and wait it out until they get the signal to blow up a hydroelectric plant that is producing heavy water that goes into making the atomic bomb. And then, once their mission is accomplished, they have to figure out how to get back while there is a manhunt after them. So it's very accessible, it's very exciting, and very lucidly described, even though there's a lot of twists and turns. It's ideal for history buffs, but also for those who normally don't read history. It's a strong choice because of its relation to what else was going on in World War II, and also because of the espionage element.
Sounds like it's the makings of a good film.
Oh, I think so.
And yeah, and speaking of films, you also serve on the multimedia list.
I edit the DVD reviews.
So can you give us like a little sneak preview of one of the titles on the list?
Sure. One is That Is Not a Good Idea, and is It's distributed by Weston Woods, and it's based on the picture book by Mo Willems. And like a lot of his tales, it's very accessible for a video adaptation. But this one is especially so, because the book is illustrated in the form of almost a silent movie with title cards and film sprockets on the edges. And so with the adaptation, you actually see the title cards, and you have film scratches and ragtime music. And it has a silent movie melodramatic plot of a hungry fox who's after plump goose. Yes, but she is not so gullible as she makes out. And another reason why it's a good choice is because there's a DVD extra called Mo's Team, and it's about the teamwork that goes behind his picture books and also the DVDs. So there's Mo Willems, his daughter Trixie, his publisher, and the whole gang. They explain how they work together.
Sounds like if you're having a house full of kids for the holidays, that you should pick up this DVD.
I agree.
Yes. So, you know, Kent, I think I am going to steal this book and read it. It's by Scholastic. So I am going to read this. But there's some other lists that are still not finished. So I understand you and Mahnaz are going to be working on them right now. Okay, thanks so much. Well, that's great. So exciting to get some of these titles. But there's so many more titles.
There are a lot. So I think we're going to start with picture books and just talk about a few of our favorites.
Great. Can't wait.
I choose three of my favorites, and these all three seem to focus on how kids learn to navigate their worlds. And the first one is called School's First Day of School. This is by Adam Rex and illustrated by the brilliant Christian Robinson. We've seen dozens of books over the years talking about kids' first day of school, but this quite is unique in that it is from the school building's first day of school. This is the Frederick Douglass Elementary School, and it's brand spanking new. And he's a little anxious, worried about what's going to happen when the kids all arrive. Are they going to be comfortable there? Are they going to like it? They're going to, have fun. And there's a lot goes on in the course of a day. For any first day of school, it's a big day. But ultimately, spoiler alert, they're all welcome to come back again the next day. The art is just great fun, and it's a super choice.
And something that all kids probably can relate to.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And the publisher?
This is by Roaring Brook. Yes.
Great.
Yes. The next book up is called I Hear a Pickle and Smell and See and Touch and Taste It Too. And it's written and illustrated by Rachel Isadora, and this was published by Penguin. This is a sensory exploration of a toddler's world. As you can see, every one of the senses is touched on there. And Rachel Isadora is renowned for her drawings of adorable little munchkins, and this is a good example of course, the sense of touch. And they are shown engaging throughout the book with their families and the natural world, and figuring out all the wonderful things that are that they're going to encounter, and what not to touch as well. And so it's the ultimate simple, engaging concept book for the youngest audiences. And the third selection I've chosen, Frank and Lucky Get Schooled. And this is written and illustrated by the marvelous Lynn Ray Perkins, and it's published by Green Willow. In this book, a boy and his dog explore their environment and together reinforce the finer points of mathematics, geography, chemistry, taxonomy, history, and art that they've been introduced to in their respective classes. They've both gone to school, and it's quite humorous and fun. And Perkins' pen and ink and watercolor vignettes capture the vivacious and funny real-world applications of these lessons that the boy, one boy's education that he has is going through with the help of his loyal canine sidekick.
For dog lovers, right?
Oh,
yes. Yeah. And Della, you're up with one of my favorites this year.
I have here Brendan Wenzel's They All Saw a Cat from Chronicle. Wenzel takes such a simple premise, what does a cat look like to all the different creatures it encounters, whether it's a child, a fox, a fish, and he just takes readers on just this wonderful exploration of perspective and how everybody kind of sees something differently. And the art is just highly imaginative, and the text is rhythmic and straightforward, and it's really great for sharing with groups and for programming ideas about storytelling. It's just wonderful.
Well, we have one for dog lovers, and now that's one for cat lovers, yes.
And then next up, I have the endlessly entertaining Rudas, Niños Horrendous Hermanitas, written and illustrated by Juji Morales from Neil Porter Books, and this is just so much fun. Morales is really great at finding the humor in sibling rivalry. Readers will love at such humorous takedowns as the poopy bomb blowout, and then they'll cheer once Nino, he is ultimately very cleverly the victor. The art is just so vibrant, it's so alive. Yeah, I think everyone will get a kick out of this.
I understand there's a few Neil Porter books on the list this year.
There isn't.
Yes. Well, they have to check the list at the end. And Neil, you have to check the list at the end of the show to find out which ones.
And last but not least for me, from a small publisher, Flying Eye Press, I have The Journey by Francesca Sana. And this is such a, talk about a timely book. This is essential reading. It begins with a girl and her family, and she's looking back over a year in which their once peaceful nation has come to war, and they must leave. They must find refuge somewhere else. And so with sparse but evocative text and really deep and graphic illustrations, Sana just tells this story. It's heartbreaking, but it's hopeful. And I couldn't think of a better work that's more appropriate for this time.
Della, what publisher again?
Flying Eye Books.
Flying Eye Books. Okay, great.
And I've got two picture books that I wanted to highlight. The first one is We Found a Hat by John Classen. So in this book, we have two tortoises who find a 10-gallon hat, and they both really want it. And as we've seen in previous books by John Classen involving hats, there's this sort of central moral dilemma. I want this thing. I think I might steal it. Should I steal it? And then what happens when you make that decision? And so there's this signature sort of understated humor and cleverness. There's that play between what the text is saying and what the illustrations are showing you as a reader, which is always really fun. But what I sort of fell in love with about this hat book by John Classen was the optimism and the sort of tenderness at the end, that despite maybe some of our baser instincts, sometimes people, and in this case tortoises, can do the selfless thing and can make the right choice even when no one's watching. So it got into my heart, this particular book this year.
So another hat genre book.
Another hat book. And my other book is The White Cat and the Monk, written by Jo Ellen Bogger, illustrated by Sydney Smith. This is from a Canadian publisher, Groundwood. And this is sort of a quieter, more contemplative story. It's told, the text is a retelling of a very old Irish poem. And the first opening sequences are wordless, and it almost feels like a graphic novel. It uses sequential art and sequences. And the illustrations here are just luminous. We're in a monastery, and there's sort of two journeys happening. There's the journey of this cat making its way through the darkened hallways. And then later on, we see the monk. He's on his own sort of journey, a journey for meaning, a journey for truth, as he's illuminating his manuscript.
Oh, look at that.
It is just a beautiful book, and I think what I loved about it is it sort of makes viewers slow down and appreciate each page, each word, and the sort of gratitude at the end of the book, the gratitude for a new day, and that the journey is sort of the point.
So, where are we going now?
I think we'll take a trip through middle grade land.
Terrific, terrific.
Yes, we had,
So middle grade chapter books, right, yes.
we had some really wonderful middle grade this year, but I'm going to start off with a chapter book. This is from Gecko Press, A Complicated Case by Ulf Nielsen, illustrated by Spee, and it's originally, it was published in Swedish, and it was translated by Julia Marshall. This is just a wonderful book. It's there's a bully in the forest, and Detective Gordon and his young protege, Buffy, are on the case. Readers will love the bumbling Gordon, as they will sympathize with the attentive Buffy as they try to figure out who is the bully. And the artwork is just really graceful, and there's just all these little Easter eggs, little hints throughout the book. So readers will return to this again and again. Yes, I love this. And next up, I have Nikki Grimes' Garvey's Choice from Wordsong.
That's an imprint of Boyd's Mills,
yes,
right?
Yes, it is. This was a favorite of mine. Garvey he's a sensitive young man. He'd rather read and think about space than do anything athletic, which is just the opposite of what his father wants. But a chance chorus recital presents a turning point in their relationship. And using Tonka, Grimes she creates this portrait of a family it's so deeply intimate, but at the same time, it's really accessible. Readers will recognize themselves right away. And Grimes, her focus on small but powerful transformations, it's inspiring, and I don't know. It's a compact but really wonderful read. And last but not least, I have Peter Brown's debut middle grade novel, The Wild Robot from Little Brown. And so it begins with Roz, a robot. She mysteriously arrives on an island, and there's some speculation as to whether or not she can adapt to this new ecosystem, if she can join the animals and live among them. And even though relationships and trust grow, the question remains. There's throughout the book, Brown has these little black and white illustrations that are just wonderful. And this is a book that will really allow readers to contemplate, technology, life, death, the future of the natural world. It's very philosophical, but still accessible, and just a great read.
So Peter Brown fans, if they haven't checked out his middle grade book, they really should.
And speaking of sort of philosophical books, I've got a few that I picked. My first middle grade pick is Pax by Sarah Pennypacker. Yeah.
I know it, yes.
Published by HarperCollins. And so, for those who haven't read this book or heard about it, I definitely recommend having like some Kleenex or tissues nearby, because it is an emotional read, as it should be. It's the story, sort of on its surface, it's a story of a boy and his beloved pet fox who are separated. So it's, a reconciliation story. It's about, these two different characters, and we meet them in alternating chapters, trying to find their way back to one another in a world that's at war, a world that's uncertain and full of danger and violence. And it's really about how we survive and how we find hope and how we find support and love amidst maybe some scary times. So this was a book that I think it's just rare, because we don't see those sorts of themes and concepts explored in middle grade very often, and with such respect for the emotional intelligence of young readers. So that was one of my favorites, and it's got just really haunting illustrations by John Classen throughout. My next pick for middle grade is The Inquisitor's Tale, written by Adam Gidwitz, with gorgeous illumination. We have another nod to illuminated manuscripts by Hatem Ali, published by Penguin. And this, it's France, it's, the Middle Ages in France, religious discord and the Inquisition, not, what most people would think were the most exciting, accessible subject matter for middle grade readers. But in the hands of Gidwitz, who we know is just a masterful storyteller with impeccable attention to historical research and detail, but also a lot of humor and just it's complex, the narrative. It's sort of stories within stories. You have different narrators telling piece of different characters' tales and legends, but you also have like farting dragons and cheese
really?
and a resurrected yes, exactly, a resurrected zombie dog. There's all these things that sophisticated readers will find something to love, but even reluctant readers who may not have thought they wanted to read about medieval France will suddenly find something to love.
All of a sudden, I'd want to go up to the cloisters.
Right.
Let's talk about manuscripts.
Yes,
right,
yes. Perfect tie-in. And finally, the last book that I wanted to highlight from our middle grade list is The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill, which is published by Algonquin. And this is a somewhat dark and just really just lovely fairy tale. And it takes place in a realm called the Protectorate. And every year, the people of the Protectorate make an offering. They take a baby from its family, from the parents, and they snatch the baby and they leave it in the woods as a sacrifice to the evil witch. And they believe that this protects them and keeps them safe for another year. Unbeknownst to them, the evil baby-eating witch is actually not evil at all, and she's a very good witch. And every year she happens to find these abandoned babies and cares for them. And she feeds them starlight to keep them well and healthy. And then she delivers them to loving families in far-flung places of the kingdom. But this year, the baby's a little unusual, and she finds herself sort of drawn in an interesting way to this child. And she accidentally feeds the child moonlight instead of sunlight. And that has interesting repercussions and sort of imbues this baby with some phenomenal powers. So it's about her raising this child and then how she has to sort of help this child find her own with these powers.
The title again?
The title again is The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill.
Oh.
Okay.
And now to Luann.
Yes. And I had some favorites. I chose 3 books, and all 3 of mine are distinguished by a very strong narrative voice. And these are middle grade books that deal with complex and serious topics, but with warm, engaging humor, and they spoke to me. So the first one is Raimi Nightingale by the one and only Kate Dicamillo.
Surprise. No, not surprise.
And this will have readers laughing and crying and rooting for its baton-twirling protagonist. Raimi takes up twirling in an attempt to distinguish herself, and she has high hopes of actually winning the Little Miss Central Florida tire competition, and by doing so attract the attention of her father, who has recently left the family. And twirling is more challenging than she thought it might be, but she ends up forming some unlikely friendships with 2 of her competitors, and they are all coping with some sort of loss, and so they have several adventures together and really form a tight bond. And Kate Dicamillo's characters are just so rich and wonderful and involving. This is just a sensitive, lovely novel that's filled with a lot of heart and hope.
I understand that the sale of batons has increased since this book has come out.
Well, I've certainly gotten mine.
And next, another familiar name.
Another familiar name, and a wonderful book called The Best Man by the inimitable Richard Peck. And this is a book about a boy who is looking to the men in his life as role models. And he's looking to his father, his grandfather, his gay uncle, and his one of his teachers. These are people he holds in very high esteem. And he's trying to figure out just how to grow up and survive middle school and become the kind of man he wants to be. And as only Richard Peck can do, it's told with just sparkling wit and just outrageously funny dialogue, and just a terrific read.
Dial. is the
Dial,
publisher.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
yes,
no.
by Dial.
That's why I'm here.
Thanks, Rocco. Trying to remember everything. Next up is a book called As Brave as You by Jason Reynolds and published by Simon & Schuster. And this is, I can't say enough about this book. I just love this book. It is also an engaging book. With the main character is 9, and his brother is his older brother. And the two boys, they're boys from Brooklyn who have been sent to rural Virginia to spend a month or so with their grandparents while their parents go off and work on their marriage. So these kids have never really met these people, and they certainly have never been asked to do farm chores and pick peas and things like that. And believe it or not, they live in a place where there is no internet. And
OMG,
yes,
oh my.
Yes. So Jeannie, the main character, is having a rough time trying to figure everything out because he has lots of questions and he needs lots of answers. So, but the first thing they figure out is that their grandfather is blind, and he goes to great lengths to cover up his disability. And it's filled with just family drama, and but just a great coming-of-age story that I think is really going to resonate with a lot of readers. And there is some estrangement, obviously, between the boy's father and the grandfather, and it all comes together in a really wonderful way.
Yes. Well, we've had picture books, we've had middle grade books, so there's more to come. We have YA and nonfiction, but before we do that, we have a word from our sponsor. So we'll be right back.
Coming up next, nonfiction and YA on SLJ's Best of 2016 livestream here on KidLit TV.
Hi, I'm Amy Dykeman.
And I'm Zach O'Hara.
And you're watching KidLit
KidLit
TV.
Librarians just need to step up to the plate, think forward, always have a vision, because I think that's really important, and always be one step ahead of the game.
Learn to lead beyond the library. Brought to you by Follett's Project Connect, this free professional development course designed exclusively for librarians teaches you how to emerge as a leader in your school and district.
We should be the leaders of the schools and be full-time in every building, and just to help everyone learn and become connected and innovative.
Take the next step in educational leadership. Get future ready with the Project Connect micro-credential program today.
Welcome back to the SLJ's Best of 2016 livestream here on KidLit TV.
Well, I know that the folks out there can't wait to hear some of the books on the YA list. So let's get right to it.
Let's get to it. So there was so much good YA this year. It was tough to pare it down. But I'm going to talk about 3 books that were just really special for me. The first one is The Reader by Tracy Chee, published by Putnam. And first of all, this is a debut novel, which is astonishing. The quality of her writing, the complex narrative structure that she uses in this novel, the diversity and nuance of the characters is, I was shocked to find that this was her first book. I think that she's a rising star. So in Sephia's world, it's a world without books. It's a world without reading. I know.
Who can believe, right?
Horrifying.
Yes.
And Sephia's father has been murdered. Her beloved aunt has been kidnapped, and the only clue that she has is this very odd rectangular object. Spoiler alert, it's a book. And
you have book earrings.
And yes, right, I have book earrings today. So this is definitely a book for book lovers in many ways, because it's like I said, the narrative structure is very complex. There's stories within stories within stories. There are almost these little like Easter egg clues hidden throughout the novel that usually on the first read you probably won't pick up. So it is the kind of book that when you finish, you kind of want to go back to page 1 and read it again and look for those clues. And it's just, it's magical, and it's a beautiful story about the power of words, that we know words have meaning, books have meaning, these things are important, and books change lives. So it was one that I truly loved. The other book, now for something completely different, that I wanted to talk about on our YA list is a book called Scythe by Neal Schusterman, published by Simon & Schuster. So just when you think, you can't do another dystopian YA novel, In Schusterman comes with not a dystopia actually, but a utopia. And that's what's so fascinating about this particular book is it looks at what if the world was perfect? What if we could eradicate war and poverty and inequity and have everything run perfectly? And so he posits a world where that is not organized by humans, because humans are flawed, but by a perfected artificial intelligence called the Thunderhead. And in this distant, distant future, the world is perfect, and there's no disease, there's no death. The only problem is potentially overpopulation. So there's a sanctioned group of people called Scythes who kill, and they cull the population. And the two main characters are two teens who are apprenticed with a scythe, and they're learning the art of doing this sanctioned killing. And so it's a book about morality, mortality. It's a book about violence and about choice, and the repercussions of taking a life. It's fascinating, and it's going to be part of a series. It's unputdownable.
And Neal won the National Book Award last year, and it sounds like he hasn't disappointed this year either.
Not letting us down at all.
And another one.
And my final book that I wanted to highlight from our YA list is We Are the Ants by Sean Hutchinson.
Terrific. Yes, he was at the SLJ Summit.
That's right. He was at the SLJ Summit, gave a wonderful talk, which we're hoping will be up online shortly at slj.com.
Yes.
You want to check it out. So in this book,
tell us.
The premise is a little unusual. So the premise is you've got this kid, Henry, and he has been abducted by aliens repeatedly since he's about 13 years old. And now I think he's about 17 or so in the book. When he's abducted this time, the aliens tell him that the world will be destroyed in 144 days. It's happening. It's getting destroyed. But he, and he alone, has the power to save the world, and all he has to do is press this button. And so the book, and the central question for the book and for Henry is, will he save the world? And Henry looks around and he sees a world that's maybe not deserving of being saved. He sees his grandmother being lost to the ravages of Alzheimer's. He sees his mother struggling to keep the family together. He's devastated by the recent suicide of his boyfriend. And he sees a world that maybe doesn't deserve to have that button pushed. So I won't tell you the decision that Henry makes, but it's unforgettable, and it's a read that just kind of stays with you.
Luann.
Yes. We all know that Luann loves YA, and I have some good ones for you. And whereas I chose sort of voice-driven books for the middle grade, these books are really about place and very atmospheric. And the first one is called The Lie Tree by Frances Hardinge. And this takes place in Victorian England. And it is about a young girl who is very, very curious and intellectually curious, and wants to do everything and find out the same things that her scientist father does, and she's constantly trying to seek his attention and have him recognize her intelligence. And as it turns out, he ends up being killed very quickly after they have moved to a small remote island, and she's convinced that he's been murdered. And so she has been exploring his records and his research, and she has come across his most secret and special specimen. He has a lie tree that feeds on lies. It thrives when you feed it lies, and when the fruit of this tree is eaten, it speak nothing but the truth. Oh. So it's a very intriguing premise, and it's just full of atmospheric, and it's a lot about many things, but the role of women in this society and oppression of and truth, the quality of truth, and it's a super read. You cannot put it down.
The author is British?
Yes.
Right, and it's published by Abrams, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, terrific.
So, my next book is called Highly Illogical Behavior, and this is by John Corey Whaley. You might recognize his name. Yeah. And this is one of the quirkier books of the year, but it is about a young man who, a teenager who has a kind of a serious problem. He has not left his home in 3 years. He is just prone to very debilitating panic attacks and anxiety. But you think, given the fact that he has such an isolated existence, that he might be pretty miserable. He's actually pretty happy. He has a good life. He is homeschooled. He gets everything he needs from his parents. He's a Star Trek aficionado. He finds lots of stimulating things on the internet to keep him engaged in the world at his own. He doesn't want to take drugs or go through the therapy that he has found just too debilitating. So anyway, this existence goes on until there is one of his former classmates decides that she is going to save him and bring him back out into the world. And she insinuates herself in his life and tries to bring about some changes. And it is warm and tender. It is funny. It is heartbreaking too, because he ultimately acknowledges that he does have a real problem. And but the solution might just surprise you. It's not exactly what you'd call highly logical.
And that's by Dial, right?
Yes, that is. And this last book is called Burn Baby Burn.
Burn Baby Burn.
This is a favorite, and this is a special shout out to Shelley and to Daryl, both of whom were very fond of this book as well. Now, this book takes place in 1977 in New York, and many of our people may not remember 1977 all that well.
Yes.
That happened to be the summer that there was a serial killer known as the Son of Sam, and he was randomly shooting people. So it was a very terrifying time. And there was, it was also the summer of the major blackout in New York City. Yes, but this is about a young teenager from Queens who is having some serious She's nervous, of course, by all the news that is out there, but she, it turns out, is probably in greater danger by some of the actions of her brother, who is involved in illicit drug sales and is engaging in some dangerous behavior. So it's a rather intense story, but it's also a great friendship story and a solid coming of age, story in a dark and gritty time. So you really are steeped in the history of the city, and even those people who have come to New York later wouldn't recognize the New York City that is described in these pages. But it is a compelling read.
Meg Medina, and Candlewick, right?
Candlewick.
And about a gritty time in New York City. Everyone refers to the 70s as a gritty time in New York. Yes. Oh, Della, what do you have? I know you have one book that I really have. Two books that I'm happy.
Yes.
Well, anyway, go ahead.
The titles that I picked for YA all feature really strong characters who faced devastating, unthinkable circumstances, but they struggle to survive and to have their voices be heard. And I'll open with Ruta Sepede's Salt to the Sea. It's historical fiction, and it's from Philomel, and it's centered on the real-life sinking of the Wilhelm Gustloff, at the close of World War II. She follows a group of refugees that are attempting to flee East Prussia in advance of Stalin's army. And she uses these really short chapters and concise writing to alternate among viewpoints, and it creates an incredible amount of tension and suspense. It's a really thrilling but eye-opening read.
I always enjoy Ruta's books because they're always so well researched, and you learn about history that you really don't know. So I'm glad this book is on the list. You did a good job picking that.
But traveling back to the present, I have Louise O'Neill's Asking for It from Quercus. It features Emma O'Donovan, is an 18-year-old girl living in a small Irish town. She's very typical. She tends to oscillate between really thoughtfulness and then moments of downright mean girl style behavior. But when she's sexually assaulted by four good guys at a party, she's shunned by her community and becomes an object of rumor and hatred. And while the ending may shock and even anger readers, this is a fantastic book to engage teens in discussions on consent, social media, and rape culture. It's a great read. And now back to the past, to 13th century France to be specific, is Julie Berry's historical fiction title, The Passion of Dulce, from Viking. And so for The Passion of Dulce, you take a young noblewoman who believes she's in communion with God, three talented sisters who are also double as tavern wenches, and a friar hell-bent on rooting out heretics. And you get a really complex and extraordinary book. Berry explores the depth and complexity of female friendship and the importance of women's voices. Dulce's refusal to be silent in the 13th century France is relevant then as it is today, and one of my favorite titles all year.
Oh, terrific. Well, a tavern wench, or three tavern wenches.
Yeah, 3 tavern wenches.
Oh, my.
Look, what I loved about this is it's a brick of a book. I mean, it looks enormous, but I just breezed through it. I mean, I read it in less than a day because it's that compelling.
Yeah.
Well, when you have 6,000 books a year, you have to go through them in a day, yes. Now on to my favorite genre, nonfiction. Yes.
I'm up first, and this is one of my top titles of the year. It's called Radiant Child, and it is by Javaka Steptoe, written and illustrated, and it is the story of a young Jean-Michel Basquiat, the artist. And it is told just in a beautiful way and illustrated. You can sort of get an impression from the cover by found objects that Javaca Steptoe has put together, just walking the very same neighborhoods and streets where Basquiat traveled and made his art and became famous. So it is just a terrific early picture book biography.
Yes, by Little Brown is the publisher?
Little Brown is the
Yes.
publisher, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay, as I said. That's why I'm here.
That's why you're here, okay.
That's right.
Next up is Some Writer, the story of E.B. White. And this is written and illustrated by Melissa Sweet, and it's published by HMH Harcourt. Houghton Harcourt. Anyway, this is a marvelous biography of the beloved author of Charlotte's Web and Stuart Little and Trumpet of the Swan, to name a few, but it's his entire life. And Melissa Sweet tells it in a beautiful way and captures his love of nature and his first and foremost his reverence for the written word and the English language, and even includes some of his work on the elements of style. And she puts this together with photographs and manuscript pages.
Source
She
document
did tons and tons of research and had great access to the family and to the
Charlotte. Right there.
Yes, the drawings, some of the Garth Williams illustrations from the books, and then also interspersed throughout are her beautiful assemblages and collage artwork, and there are little sections throughout that are taken from the various works. It is a completely engaging and wonderful tribute to a master.
This recently came out, I would think in October, right?
Yes, it did. And last but not least is Echo. And this follows on the heels of Mirror, Mirror and Follow, Follow. These are by Marilyn Singer and illustrated by José Mas. And these are published by Dial. I should know these things. And these feature, this is the other title that Kent had mentioned earlier about the Greek myths, and these feature the device of the Reverso Poem. Now, do you know what a Reverso Poem is?
I actually do know what a Reverso Poem, because I actually was at the preview for this book when Marilyn actually was there, and on the SLJ website there's a little video of Marilyn doing Reverso poems.
Well,
but explain what it is.
Is the use of one. Here you go, and you use the same words going down this way, and then when you reverse it and turn it this way for an alternative point of view. So and the wonderful stories of King Midas and his daughters and other Greek myths lend themselves to the different points of view and are just very rich fodder for the Reverso technique.
And I think for a teacher too, with a class, to also use this book and then have your students try to do a Reverso poem.
Well,
yes,
it's harder than it looks.
Yes.
So for nonfiction, I have first up is from Holiday House. I have Russell Friedman's Vietnam. Friedman, he definitely distills the complexity of the Vietnam War for a middle grade audience, and he really focuses on how peace potentially could have been achieved, but ignorance, pride, and a total lack of respect prevailed instead. And while major battles and offensives are discussed, Friedman really focuses on the politics of the war, including when it was initially colonized by the French, and then leading up to more recent events. John Kerry's returning there, and yeah.
And he always uses photographs so well
Yes.
in his book. It goes all the way back to like 1988 when he got the Newbery for Lincoln of photobiography, and here he is with Vietnam. That's terrific to see him on the list.
And then for the younger crowd, for about preschoolers and elementary students, we have Best in Snow by April Pulley Sayer. Photographs by her too, and this is from Beach Lane, Simon & Schuster Beach Lane. And this is a photographic exploration of the water cycle in a winter landscape, and it begins very quietly with a freeze, and then a breeze, a cloud, and it ends with a squirrel and a snowflake landing on a squirrel's nose, and it's adorable, but it's also just, the combination of her lyrical and economical verse with these just really exquisite photographs is superb, and it's just the perfect title for STEM-related, either one-on-one or in group read-alouds.
And that's a Simon & Schuster imprint, Beach
Yes,
Beach Lane?
Beach Lane, yes.
Beach Lane, yes.
And last but not least is Gail Jarrow's Bubonic Panic, When Plague Invaded America, from Boyd Mills' imprint Calkins Creek. The reinsurgence of the bubonic plague in San Francisco in the earliest 20th century was not limited to just sickness and death, but also fear, isolation, and xenophobia. Jarrow expertly researches the science, history, and politics behind the outbreak and its impact on U.S. history for middle schoolers. Kids will come for the really gross photos of infected body parts and rats, but they'll stay for the riveting story.
I heard Gail speak about her research for this book, and it's really, besides you were mentioning the photos, it's a really very interesting story. Yes. And now it's you.
Yeah, a few more nonfiction titles.
And no more hiccups. That's
Yeah,
right.
hopefully not.
Yes.
So I have a couple nonfiction books that I wanted to highlight. The first one is called Jazz Day: The Making of a Famous Photograph by Roxanne Orgel. Illustrations by Francis Vallejo, published by Candlewick. And so this is such a unique book. It is the true story about how Art Kane, who was a graphic designer at, I believe, Esquire magazine in the 50s, they were working on this special golden age of jazz feature or supplement, and he decided, wouldn't it be really cool if we can get like all of these living jazz legends together for one iconic photograph. We'll get them all together in Harlem in front of a brownstone. Great idea, but the reality of making that happen, of course, is way more complicated. And so what Orgel does is tell this story through poems, through verse. And you've got all of these amazing jazz legends, everyone from Count Basie to Duke Ellington, and just amazing musicians, and you have these different sort of, it's almost like a kaleidoscopic telling. You have these different voices from these famous jazz legends, but also regular kids in the neighborhood. There's this one spread with a little girl looking out the top floor of a brownstone down at the photograph, sort of like waiting for it to be over so they can go out and play on the street. And the illustrations are just incredible and vibrant. This is the kind of book that I feel like you can use in so many different ways. You can look at it from the perspective of poetry and attack it through like a poetry lesson or unit. You could look at it through the lens of American history, specifically of Harlem, the jazz era. You will probably want to go to YouTube and look up some of these amazing songs and watch some of these performers. And there's, of course, the biographical information too about all of these people. So this is a special book. I think it's a unique one and such a celebration of this little special moment in time. And the actual photograph that Art Kane took is in the back.
Oh,
so
great.
you can then go back and
wondering
match
about
up.
that.
Yeah.
Oh, terrific.
You have to start with this. These are the days before Photoshop, obviously.
Right, when it wasn't
right.
easy. Yes.
And next up is a book by a smaller publisher, Little B. It's called Freedom in Congo Square, written by Carol Boston Weatherford with just glorious illustrations by R. Gregory Christie. And, you know, this is a book that I think is just unique and so important. We've seen over the last couple years different picture books sort of try to tell the history or about American slavery or to tackle the subject, and as we know, that's a very hard thing to do and do it right. And this book, it takes place in New Orleans on a plantation, and it takes you through a week of the lives of the enslaved people who were enslaved on a plantation, and the work that they had to do, and you can see through the illustrations a recognition of their lives and a respect for the reality of their lives. And what was unique at this time in New Orleans, which was not the case in many other places, was half days on Sundays. Enslaved people were permitted to go to a place called Congo Square and gather, and it was a marketplace. It was a place where they made music and sang and celebrated their own tribal cultures. And so it's got that very unique balance between the reality of slave life with a respect for the history for a young audience. And there's a foreword, there's also an author's note that talks a little bit more about Congo Square, about the law, and about the lives of the people then. So that is...
And this book was just named a Best Illustrated Book for the New York Times.
Yeah, and you can see why. I mean, the illustrations is just incredible. And finally, I wanted to just mention, if you know me, you know I've been talking about this book since it came out. It is The Borden Murders by Sarah Miller. And this is the true story of Lizzie Borden. And, you know, a lot of us know, like, that terrible rhyme, right? Lizzie Borden took an axe, right? Gave her father 40 whacks, etc. And it's the true story of their murder. It's the murder of her father and her stepmother, and how she was put on trial for their murder, this young woman. And what's fascinating is, first of all, the pacing is incredible. I mean, if you're a fan of Serial and things like that, it's every chapter you're sort of in a different headspace. You know, you start out thinking, oh, she's totally guilty, she did it, and then Miller unfolds a little bit more evidence or a little bit more context about the time, and then you're like, oh no, she did. I don't know. It's the media. They were totally biased against her because she wasn't conforming to feminine ideals of the time, or what have you. So it is absolutely engrossing, beautifully researched, and if you like, you know, a really definitive ending, you're not going to like this book because it respects the fact that history is told by, you know, sort of the winners, and you have to sort of take the media in context.
And she lived to be quite old, right?
She did indeed.
Yeah, and the publisher of that book?
That is...
Oh, well...
Schwartz and Wade.
Oh, Schwartz and Wade. Okay, yes, we don't want to... Yes, our friends at Schwartz and Wade. Yes, so those are all our nonfiction books. Well, but we're not finished. There is more. But before the more, we have another word from our sponsor. We'll see you in a minute.
Glaciers made them gasp. Elephants made them giggle. Now with exciting new titles, even more students can be delighted by the same jaw-dropping interactive discovery platform, Lightbox. These new Follett exclusive titles support the lessons we know you're teaching. Middle school topics like forces in motion, biological adaptations, the solar system, and ancient empires and civilizations. Your high school students will love to learn about the Civil War and explore the impact of climate change using Lightbox. There's even Spanish titles. And imagine the same interactive experience for classic literature. In Follett's exclusive Lightbox Literature Studies, students can hear from Harper Lee, discover Macomb County and the streets Scout may have walked in To Kill a Mockingbird, or immerse themselves in Orwell's 1984 and Shakespeare's Macbeth. Discover why students and teachers love Follett's award-winning Lightbox.
I am Peter H. Reynolds, and I am author of The Dot, and you are watching KidLit TV.
Welcome back to the SLJ's Best of 2016 live stream here on KidLit TV.
We're back, and I understand the Twitterverse has been just lighting up with the hashtag SLJ Best 2016, but these books are only just a small number of the 66 best books, but there are other things that are best this year.
That's right. Yeah, this is just like the tip of the iceberg. The full list of the 66 best books of the year are available for download right now below. You can get that. But also we have some other great lists coming very soon. So one of them is our best adult books for teens. And this is a column that we do all through the year. We review, our columnists, Mark Flowers and Sarah Hill, review grown-up books, adult books that are appropriate for high schools and teen readers. So they have selected their favorites from the entire year. So that will be available soon as well. And then we have all of our amazing top 10s. And a lot of our top 10s are written by some of our special bloggers, like the Good Comics for Kids bloggers do our top 10 graphic novels list. We have some of our Libro por Libro contributors do our top 10 Latinx books. So we'll have that list coming out shortly. We've got top 10 DVDs, audiobooks, apps. What am I missing?
Music.
Music is new this year. I'm very excited. We have not done a top 10 music list in the past, but we have a great new contributor, Veronica DeFazio, who put that list together for us.
I can't wait till next year because we're going to probably lip sync some of the music titles.
Right?
Yes.
Next year.
Yes. Now, I want to thank the people behind the scenes. There's Julie and Kat and Alex, who without those guys, we would not look as good as we do. Yes, and so remember, the list is available for download both on the SLJ site and the KidLit TV, and tell your friends that this whole great show has been archived. So, you know, they could watch it tonight, you know, whatever. You don't want to watch the news. You can just watch this tonight. It'll be, well, will it be archived tonight? Yes, yes, they could watch it tonight or tomorrow, or they could send the link out to all your friends in your holiday greetings. Okay.
And check back next week. I believe the November 21st is when we'll have all of those top 10s and all those other special lists on the SLJ website. So come back and check us out.
And one more shout out. The artwork for the upcoming issue. Tell us about that.
Yes, do you want to say a little bit about who did the artwork this year for our cover?
Well, we talked about it, and we had a unanimous choice, and we have someone who has 2 books on our list, and we just love everything he does. But we're very excited to have Christian Robinson do our December Best Books cover. Yes.
Yes. So, remember, until next time, give a kid a book in any format.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you for watching the SLJ Best of 2016 live stream, sponsored by Follett and Scholastic. And thank you for tuning in to KidLit TV.
I'm Aram Kim, and you are watching KidLit TV.